You're now tuned into multi-dimensional memo radio, the place where the wild resides. And we're back. How y'all been? And welcome back to Multidimensional Memo Radio. So we decided to switch things up, and we've gotten on the topic of the SCP Foundation. What is SCP? Well, if you're unfamiliar, go ahead and check out the wiki page. I'll give you the quick rundown and let you know that SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect. Now this is a vast library, so I had a little trouble figuring out where we were going to start at. And I decided that we're going to start in a section of the library called From 120's Archives Hub. So starting in the 120 archive, there's an introduction that I'm going to read to you. And after this introduction, we're going to go ahead and start going through this archive. Once upon a time, there was an empire. For untold millennia, it chained the whole world under its iron fist as two god queens prevailed over death itself. It proclaimed everything and everyone as its property, covering the whole globe with its cruelty and hubris as it stretched its greedy arms across the cosmos. To anyone that would bear witness, not even the heavens could challenge its mad monarchs and silver spires. It took but a single civil war for it to crumble to dust. Once upon a time, there was a faith. It sprawled across all continents, hell-bent on replacing the old rigid world order with its new dogma. Reaching from the depths of desperation into the heights of hypothesis, it aimed to do nothing but reshape the world into what it saw as the epitome of freedom. To anyone who would bear witness, the wave of flesh the Sorcerer King commanded wouldn't stop upon anything or anyone. It took but a single nation of united steel to break its stride. Once upon a time, there was an army. With a fury of 1,000,000 hoofs, it advanced forward, its infinite legions conquering every world they could ever hope to see. Its generals laughed, seeing no force equal to their own, not here, not beyond the horizon, not now, not ever. To anyone that would bear witness, the wrath of the Ring Horde was equal to that of God himself. And once upon a time, there was a foundation. Its secret facilities with its crumbling old men. It shafted the whole world into numbers and classes. It organized all of reality into neat little boxes, suppressing any witness of opposition against its conspiracy with the fury of 1,000 suns. To anyone that would bear witness, it was the ultimate and infallible judge of what was right and wrong, now and forever. But not everyone wanted to bear witness, and times have changed. The world is booming with magic and paratechnology like it never had before, and the planet is more than ready for another shift in the paradigm. History doesn't repeat itself, that much is certain, but it sure as heck rhymes. And from the looks of things, the beginning of the next verse is not that far away. So then it continues down and it goes to a section titled Ancient Times. And ancient times runs from an unknown time up until the year 870 AD. Long before the Order of the Veil was set in place, the world was different, more ruthless and more unforgiving, but all the more wonderful and beautiful. Once upon a time, there was no SCP Foundation and its rigid world structure. Back then, the thing that controlled the world wasn't numbers or shadow councils. It was pure, unfiltered magic. And those that were brave or foolish enough to use it for their own gain. Now, chapter 0 starts with articles, and the first article in chapter 0 is entitled The Enlightened Children, written by Warrior of Chaos.
Ancient Troganian tale is told by Zazo, Dragoon of Mind and head of preservation of magical, informative and historical records. The ages before the empire were ones of tranquility and unfamiliarity. In those days, the lands and seas of Gaia were pure and new as that of a newborn, first opening their waking eyes to the world before them. Natural beauties and monuments graced the biomes, from the tallest mountain beyond the horizon to the smallest flower in a lush vibrant field. It was a time untouched by the influence and defilement of both the malicious and the wicked, a time before the first raging fires of war spread upon the plains and scorched the many gifts of nature, a time before the claws of both the savage Baji and her mindless pawns defiled Gaia's face with blood and broken minds. It was also in those days that all existence was truly rich with the mysterious and the hidden, waiting for the wise and devoted to seek them out and uncover what is yet to be known. From the day of the great hatching of the egg of Bahamut's kin, the Skykeepers have embraced this way of life, swimming in knowledge and the many riches of eternity that lay hidden above and below. Continuing to watch over the skies and preserving the boundless life that Gaia designed and the flesh mother spawned, as well as being the first beings to discover the secrets of mana and the way of magic. Of course, they were not the only of those whose minds were open to awareness and intellect. Many other peoples walked this world, who were touched by the ever-expanding currents of the Iron Scholar's wisdom that he let flow upon the winds. Though unlike them, these peoples weren't yet as aware and thus their minds were still mostly dominated by the instincts. Feeling astonishment and pity for these beings, they chose to ensure that these people too fully embraced the shining wisdom of intellect, by guiding them and sharing what they have come to learn of the world around them. Though slow at first, many have went on to prosper and embrace the path of knowledge and became a stronger people both in body and spirit. When Pangloss witnessed this act, he was greatly pleased and proud, as he cherished all those of awareness and intelligence. But out of all the peoples that have found themselves upon the young Gaia, there came 4 whose minds shined brighter than any others and who the Skykeepers believed with time, could rival and match their own wise minds. These 4 peoples would come to be known as the Enlightened Children. The first children were the Sun Seekers, who came from the grass plains over the open hills bathed by the light of Sol. The second children were the Stargazers, who came from the vibrant forests below the glistening stars in the heavens beyond. The third children were the Night Walkers, who came from the dark caverns deep within the lush jungles under the glow of Luna. The fourth and final children were the Sea Dwellers, who came from the golden beaches leading to the vast crystal waters of the deep. When they first came across the Enlightened Children, they immediately knew that these creatures were not like all others, for there was something unique about them that one would not normally notice. As they continued to watch and observe these children, they were able to learn so much about them, and what they discovered was absolutely extraordinary. Despite being four separate races that were so similar yet also vastly different when it comes to the body and nature, the enlightened children shared an essential ancestry that, while small, was strong. They also had some of the richest pools of mana compared to most other peoples of Gaia, though nowhere near as rich and strong as the Sky Keepers, was still very impressive nonetheless. The children, when they first emerged, however, were shy and wary. The four peoples were completely unaware of the existence of the other three, as they never attempted to meet, as they avoided any not like themselves. Seeing this display of paranoia and denial of risk, the Skykeepers deduced that if this way of life was left to continue as it did, the bright shine of the enlightened children's minds will begin to dim and snuff out, leaving them to fall back into the claws of mindless instincts. That was a fate they refused to allow to come to fruition. So much like all other peoples, they presented themselves to the enlightened children, who at first responded with great fear and worry. Therefore Avalis, mighty Skykeeper noble of the Ying-Along clan, bestowed four great gifts to each of the four peoples as a sign of trust and an offering of friendship. For the Sunseekers, they were gifted with a golden sword that shined a radiant light warm as the rays of the sun and provided guidance to those that wield it, for the blade was alive with that of an honor-born soul. For the Stargazers, they were gifted with a silver woodwind that mesmerized and led all who heard its melodies, as well as shaping dreams that inspired creativity and beauty. For the Nightwalkers, they were gifted a bronze staff that guided the roots and stems of nature itself to take new shapes and wield mighty magic, as well as being a spyglass to view worlds in the beyond. For the Sea Dwellers, they were gifted a crystal conch shell that allowed one to hear and speak to spirits of the ethereal, as well as opening doorways into the seas of the astral waves. These gifts came to be known as the Four Noble Oaths. With these gifts bestowed, the enlightened children were no longer weary of the Skykeepers and accepted the offer of friendship. Thus, much like all other peoples, they shared the knowledge they uncovered and lead them towards a brighter future, along with bringing all four to finally meet and prosper together. They then chose to teach them how to harness mana and the ways of the magic arts, making them the first to wield the powers of sorcery and giving rise to the first generation of mages. Once the Skykeepers believed that they were ready to discover more on their own, they selected the wisest and most righteous member of each of the four peoples of the enlightened children to lead them, who would come to be known as the disciples of nobility. These individuals came to be known as Sapius, Morgant, Wukong, and Hilda. Sapius would go on to be leader of the Sunseekers, who would inhabit the plains and the hills. Morgant went on to lead the Stargazers, that chose to live surrounded by the forests and meadows. Wukong guiding the Nightwalkers, where they went deep within the jungles and the caverns. Finally, Hilda watched and protected the Sea Dwellers, as they wandered the beaches and delved into the oceans. These four would go on to be the righteous and noble rulers of their people, mighty and caring chieftains who put the lives and well-being of their people above themselves. They would also take on the responsibility of possessors and protectors of the Four Noble Oaths. These duties would then be passed on to their successors once their time on Gaia came to an end, whether they be a blood descendant or a most trusted companion. All four peoples went on to prosper and shine, as they went on to build mighty kingdoms that they call home and lived in harmony for many generations. They would go on to discover many wonders and secrets of the world and learn of the ancient deities and guardians that walked alongside the lands of Gaia. Much like those who helped them, many citizens of the Four Kingdoms chose to share the ways of the magic arts among the other peoples of the world, who would go on to start their own cultures and build their own settlements. It was an age of true prosperity and unity as the Skykeepers, the peoples of Gaia, and the enlightened children built a beautiful era, where war was unheard of, and peace was absolute. An era that stretched on for many hundreds of years. But then came the arrival of Baji and her Chuba, and the chaos that would lead to the War of Wisdom. As the Chuba sought out to drive the Skykeepers towards savage corruption, they also brought their pharaoh wrath down on the many peoples of Gaia. thousands ruthlessly slaughtered and driven into savagery by the feral claws of the Chuba, entire villages brought to ruin and left silent as the desert winds. While the Skykeepers sought out this mad plague at the source at Isbaji, the kingdoms of the enlightened children took up arms against the Chuba and aided those who could not stand against their violent might alone. In the end, Baji and her forces were defeated, but the devastation was one that did not leave the lands and the seas without scars, as well as revealing to all that not all divine beings are loving or benevolent. This was also the age that reminded all of enlightened minds that morality is like the common coin. It had two sides, good and evil. It wasn't long after the war before those with evil and wicked intent began to rise and make themselves known to the inhabitants of Gaia, from petty criminals to power-hungry warlords. Many greedy and wicked individuals began to cause chaos for all the peoples of the lands, as well as launching attacks on the Skykeepers' brothers and sisters. Some even went as far as to attempt to steal the Four Noble Oaths from the disciples. The Skykeepers would not allow such anarchy and madness to continue, so they took action against those who harm the innocent and who seek to slaughter their people for their own selfish intentions. Many of the peoples of the lands and even the four kingdoms of the enlightened children were motivated and given courage to stand up against these wicked crooks, bringing them to their knees and placing them behind bars of steel and walls of stone. All who betrayed and hunted the Skykeepers' brethren failed miserably in their conquests and were brought to justice. Many were punished with horrible curses that altered them into monstrous forms to reflect the blackness in their hearts. Some had a bind placed upon them, preventing them from ever relishing in the mighty powers of mana and the magic arts ever again, while others left them with no option but to slay them and send their souls to the next world. It seemed that another time of peace and tranquility was about to begin, as order was restored, and all people were living happy lives once again. But then one day, in the Stargazer's kingdom of our land, the next generation of Morgan's descendants were born. Twin sisters of royal blood, one pure and the other rotten. As these twins matured, it was evident that they were blessed with higher mana compared to their fellow stargazers and were shown to possess a natural talent for the magic arts. However, while the pure twin used these arts to create and benefit the many, the other used these arts to destroy and benefit themselves. The pure twin was a kind-hearted soul who loved all living beings, no matter how different or strange they seemed. The rotten twin, on the other hand, was a spoiled, devious demon who saw themselves above all others and the three other peoples of the enlightened children as pathetic and worthless. When Avalis presented himself within the walls of our land and laid eyes upon the twins, he knew immediately that despite being of the same blood, they were true opposites. He knew the rotten twin was born with a wicked heart and would lead a dark age for the Stargazers if they were to be chosen as the successor of the throne. Little did the peoples of Gaia know of the slowly approaching dark storm that would swallow them all. Decades later, when word began to spread of Skykeepers of the Drag clan being found dead within their nesting domain by Nightwalker cartographers, their bodies shriveled and dry with scales brittle and gray, great worry began to spread among the many clans and even the many settlements of Gaia's people. It soon became clear to the Ying-Along clan that their Drag brothers and sisters were slain in their sleep, their bodies drained of all mana to the point their souls were lost. This news enraged and disgusted many of their brethren, who desired to unmask the identity of this offender, and delivered their infernal retribution upon them. The nobles of the many Skykeeper clans, however, already knew the assassin's identity, and already set out to Orlin to bring down their wrath upon them. But Avalis, being the wisest and oldest of the nobles, was not arrogant and knew the possibility of failure, and noticed the oncoming darkness. So, before they set out to the Stargazer capital, he persuaded his fellow nobles to create a mighty charm empowered with their own mana, which would bestow great power and blessings to the one who possessed it. They named this charm the Scale Heart. In the end, Avalis' fear of failure came true. For the rotten twin Mab, through manipulating the dark spark within her people's hearts and the power of the Silverwood Wind, amassed a mighty army which she unleashed upon the lands of Gaia. Though the nobles fought bravely with valor and honor, they sadly were overwhelmed by the power of the mad monarch and her forces, using the stolen mana of their people against them. It wasn't long before they too were consumed and joined the collective of tormented souls. All but for Avalis, who with the last of his strength fled. But before he escaped our land, he came across the other twin, who also attempted to flee from her sister's wrath. In that moment, Avalis saw a spark of hope within the maiden's eyes. Thus, he bestowed upon her the skill heart, which would be the key to overthrowing her sister. He then entrusted to her a mission. She would protect the many souls of this world, both her own who remain uncorrupted by her wicked sibling and all others of Gaia, and to grow wiser and stronger, until the day came when she would end her sister's tyranny. She accepted this duty and would ensure that one day, all souls of this existence would once again live in harmony. Satisfied, Avalis then fled back into the clouds. He then went on to gather and persuade many of the peoples of the land as he could, both his fellow sky keepers, the settlements of Gaia, and of the enlightened children to flee with him into another existence, where they would remain in comfort and security until the day came where they could once again walk upon Gaia's domain. The Mad Monarch, now ruler of the kingdom of our land, sent her legion upon the rest of the lands who could not follow Avalis in time. Many of the settlements were forced to bow before Mab and swear servitude or be slain and forgotten. The Sun Keeper kingdom of Anuno was brought to ruin as their marble towers were consumed by flames and the golden sword was lost, their enlightened minds then locked away as they were reduced to primitives, for Mab saw them as nothing but pathetic and made them her pets as a cruel joke. The Nightwalker kingdom of Pellucidar withered and died as a suffocating pestilence caused their vine-weaved temples to rot and crumble, their people forced into slavery while the bronze staff was locked away, waiting until the day it would once again return to the hands of a wise Nightwalker it can call master. The sea dwellers on the other hand were able to escape Mab's wrath, as they summoned a mighty leatherback titan with the crystal conch shell, which then perched their home kingdom of Phanahim onto its back and drifted off into the vast blue. As for the Sky Keepers, they chose the path of isolation. Many went deep into the bowels of the mountains, while others chose to shelter within the caverns above and below the oceans. They kept themselves quiet and hidden from the forces of Mab above, as she corrupted the once beautiful and peaceful kingdom of the Stargazers into a nightmarish and ruthless nation. Thus marked the end of the Age of Tranquility, and the beginning of the Age of the Undoer and her dark empire.
To be continued.